Good Yontif, Chavdala Teves. Even though one would wonder why is it a good Yontif, but Yom Ishtalkus and Hilula, the first year may be sad, the second year, but after a while, it's considered to be a day of Poel Yeshua's Bekerev Aretz, as the Alter Rebbe himself writes about the Yartzeit. And this day, all the work and all the Torah and all the Avodah of the Tzaddik rises upward to another level, and Poel Yeshua is Bekerev Aretz. It brings down Yeshua, redemption, salvation to us below. 50 years ago, literally this time, on this day, the same kfi as the Alter Rebbe passed away around 10:30, Motzei Shabbos after Avdallah, in a city called Vienna. And the Rebbe, 150 years later, was Tavshin Chov Gimel, 1963, came down at 10:30 and at Farbrengen, 770. I was a kid, I don't remember, I was a baby basically. But I heard from the people there that it was unbelievable, Farbrengen. Then the Rebbe spoke, he started out, he says, when you Farbreng on a day of Hilula of a Tzaddik, of the Rebbe, it's like you're giving him a pan, personally, and asking for brachas for you and your wife and children and family. So the Rebbe said, that's what we're doing now. He quoted the Frierdiker Rebbe and then started the whole Farbrengen. Very powerful Farbrengen. One of the things the Rebbe spoke about was actually a Farbrengen from the Frierdiker Rebbe, Topshin Beis, where the Frierdiker Rebbe spoke about the periods of 50 years from the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov was born in the year Nachas. So every 50 years something significant happened. Nachas was Taf Nun Ches, so 50 Taf Kuf Ches was Nachas. No, 2nd. Taf Nun Ches and 50 would be Taf Kuf Ches, right? So Taf Kuf Ches was the Alter Rebbe was born in Kahos, Taf Kuf Hey. She says something happened in Taf Kuf Ches. I'm trying to remember what. Something significant. And then Taf Kuf Nun Ches is when the Alter Rebbe went to Tanya, was printed.
1798.
And Taf Reish Ches was when Likutei Torah was printed.
1898.
And Taf Reish Nun Ches was when the Yeshivas Temchet Mim opened up. So he spoke about all the 50 Yevels. And then Tafshin Nun Ches, that would mean that Tafshin Nun Ches, Tafshin, what am I saying? What did I say? Taf Reish Nun Ches, 50 years from that would be Tafshin Ches, right? Am I right about that?
Yes.
Yeah. Tafshin Ches, well, Tafshin Ches was, Israel became a state, but that's another story. Anyway, the Rebbe spoke about this and spoke about the periods of 50. So now we're like in 50 periods of Yovel from when the Alter Rebbe passed away. And a lot of fascinating stuff. This morning, before the Rebbe went to the oil 50 years ago, they brought the Rebbe a thing called Sefer Chassidim. The Rebbe had a request that they should gather all the pictures, all the Chassidim, and make a Sefer Chassidim. And they presented it to the Rebbe this morning, Sunday morning, before he went to the oil, around now, a little later, like 11. And the Rebbe gave a bracha that all the Chassidim should have generations, healthy generations of Chassidim afterwards, and so on. Then the Rebbe went to the oil, that's 50 years ago, and at night, Sunday night, tonight, there was another Farbrengen. It was very rare those days, it didn't exist. There were no.
What was the content of the Sefer?
It was just pictures and names of all the Chassidim, their families. Like a type of. And anytime they wanted to revive it, for some reason, no one ever did it again. But it was given to the Rebbe that morning, and he was very. And then Sunday night was another Farbrengen. And the Rebbe made a siyum on the whole Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe. Spoke about everybody giving charity in the number of 150. And not in small numbers, but in large denominations. And everyone should add 150 hours of learning Chassidus. It was all about 150. And so I assume that the proper achlata this year would be to do the same thing for the number of 200. Based on the Rebbe's directive then. The few thing I wanted to share was that the Shabbos afterwards, next Shabbos Ba'era, was another Farbrengen. And the Rebbe spoke, the first Sikha, and after the first Sikha they started singing Nigun. The Rebbe stopped them and said, we know that we don't farbring every time Shabbos. We only farbring Shabbos Mevarchim. Those years are only Shabbos Mevarchim. So there's a farbring, and it's because of the Hilula of the Alter Rebbe. And no one thought of singing a nigun of the Alter Rebbe. And was very, very disturbed by that. He says, we spoke that we're standing in front of the Rebbe and giving him a pan. And it's like, everyone forgot that you're standing in front of the Rebbe. How could you sing another song? Shows that your mind is elsewhere.
It's a week later, though.
Yeah, but why is there farbringen now?
Right.
Well, for a week later, and if you really take it seriously, it was just when I was reading these sikhs, then the Rebbe said, and now it's 13 years since Tafshin Yud. We're ready bar mitzvah, meaning since the Rebbe. He says, if you're bar mitzvah, people should know better. So I say to myself, now it's 63 years, bar mitzvah plus 50, right? So, and I was reading these sikhs, and I couldn't believe that everything there, almost nothing was done. So I said to myself, there's maybe sharp words, but I'm not surprised at all. The Rebbe said a year before, 11 months before his stroke, that I did everything. He basically said everything. So all you got to do is replay what he said and do it, and then you'll have him back. What would the Rebbe be doing here now? Repeating himself what he said 50 years ago. That's what we want. Now, I would prefer that also. I don't mind that the Rebbe come repeat himself. But you know what I'm saying? At some point, I told you about my... I remember we used to go into Yechidus for our birthdays. I went till 17, then the Rebbe stopped. But I remember I used to think already, what am I wasting the Rebbe's time? Same thing. And then the Rebbe said that, Chayel, Tov Shalom Adalad. It was 1974. And the Rebbe said, every year the Bar Mitzvah, the Yom HaLedas boys come in, same face, the same manhagas, the same note, the same brachas. They come back, it's the same thing. It's waste of my time, a waste of their time. And I learned much from that, because it wasn't that the Rebbe didn't have compassion. Trust me, you could see the Rebbe repeat himself many times, and he had patience like God, godly patience, to knock into a bunch of, wooden heads what he wanted. And but at some point there is expectation of maturity. So as sad as it sounds, I'm not surprised by Gimel Tammuz in retrospect. I don't mean Gimel Tammuz. I'd rather the Rebbe be here. Trust me, don't get me wrong. I don't want anyone to misinterpret this. But I understand on a cosmic level, the Rebbe had a stroke, and then for 2 years was held here by God. Why? Well, if we believe that God runs the show, and especially a Rebbe's life, you want to take him. What are you playing around here? Like, what are you keeping the Rebbe locked up in a room? It's all the tsar of that. So I have no doubt that it's a form of like watching. Okay, what are you guys going to do? And now I say to myself, okay, now it's another 18 years, 19 years. And I'm not saying this, I'm not saying Musha to you, I'm speaking to myself. It's if you really take it to heart, it's quite disturbing, the whole picture. What can I tell you? So I say to myself, I read the Sikhs of 50 years ago, and literally, you just do what he said there without one hisofa, forget about 50 years more. You change the world. You should see what he speaks about, spreading chassidus, conquering the world of chassidus. And there was no technology what we have today, and all that. So, that's my few hearts. But I said, when I read the Sikh, the Rebbe says, you don't even sing the Alter Rebbe's nigun. It wasn't about the nigun, it meant, where's your head? That's what are you thinking about? Huh? Where's your head? What are you thinking? So, anyway, being a chayzer and being someone that has read this, I feel responsible to share it, so I'm sharing it. So I've been sitting, obviously, trying to create my own little revolution here. So I was reading the Maimarim of the Alter Rebbe, the last days of his life. You really want to see somebody in their full colors. You see them under pressure, so to speak. And fascinating, because I found that in Tafshin Yutes, the Rebbe said that the Torahs of the Alter Rebbe in Kfar Piena, that was the place where he ended up. What happened was in the month of Elul, that year, 1812, say August 1812, Elul Tov Kuf Ayin Beis, that's when the war began. And Liadi was close to the front. So Alter Rebbe began running. Now the Alter Rebbe was in Liadi for over 11 years. And the big bulk of Chassidus, as we know from the Alter Rebbe, was those years. Because he came out of prison, Tov Kuf Nun Tes. He settled in Liadi, Tov Kuf Samach Aleph. So the Maimarim, when you look at the Maimarim of the Alter Rebbe, they begin Tov Kuf Samach Aleph, Samach Beis, Samach Gimel. Not that the Alter Rebbe didn't teach before. He wrote Tanya, but it was Maimarim, it was short Maimarim. The main bulk of Chassidus Chabad was developed in those 11 years in Liadi. That was it. Now he had to start running, and there's a book lately written by Rabbi Munshine. It's called Hamasa Achron, the Last Journey. It's a whole map of how the Alter Rebbe, this would be Elul, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Teves, 4 months, and the upheaval basically took a toll on the Alter Rebbe, and it's amazing stuff. If you really start, I was reading the last few weeks. It's just like an amazing period in time, because the Franco-Russian War is a major war. It's Napoleon. The Alter Rebbe, as you know, sided with Alexander, and I always learned that the Alter Rebbe for that gave his life. So I just was reading that the Alter Rebbe said a very powerful line. He says, wherever there's tzaddikim that are shalei ba'erech higher than a generation, the klippa, the opposite, there's also someone that is extreme evil. And he brings the Baal Shem Tov. There was the Duke, who's then of Austria, the big Duke, the big Archduke. He brings a few generations at this. Then with himself, he doesn't say the tzaddikim, the Alter Rebbe wouldn't speak about himself, but he says, and in our generation we have Napoleon, a big klippa. It says the Alter Rebbe said, very sadly, he said, and vice days, we may need to have Mr. Nefesh Begashmis to weaken him, which really means that he had to give his life for it. Which was, of course, his life was already extended because Dvaralei had given her life for the Alter Rebbe earlier. It's interesting. So he began this journey, and once he started to leave, once the upheaval began Liadi, the Maimarim, even though he said them, were not documented. But we have a whole bunch of them that were documented in the last days of his life, because Tzemach Tzedek was with him. So the Rebbe said in Tafshin Yates that it would be worthwhile to gather them together.
Tzemach Tzedek was on the journey with him?
I don't know, I didn't check the whole journey, but he was definitely with him the last days. So I was reading, they gathered them, and it's interesting, the last Torahs of the Alter Rebbe are extremely personal. They're not just esoteric, they're all personal.
Which volume?
Tov Kuf Ayin Gimel. So it says, they're very short, most of them. Now, the classic Ageres HaKedesh Siman Chaf, I don't know if you ever learned it well. Iyu v'chayu chad. That one is written with Chodim Mistal Kusei. And it has the biggest chidushim of the Alter Rebbe on what he wrote the last few days of his life. Can you imagine? The chidush about Ein Sof, and the chidush about Yesh. That the Yesh Hanivra comes from the Yesh Amiti. Those chidushim are written in Kvar Piana, and a few others. I'll just mention a few in honor of Chavdal Teves, if I may. He has a Torah on why you wash your face, and it's a mitzvah to wash with warm water before Shabbos. That Friday, Erev of Gimel Teves, the Alter Rebbe gave a Torah on that, and he explains it because it's like the weakening. The warm water is like the mevachin. It's the like weakening the klippa of the 6 days of the week. He explains it up in Kabbalah and so on. See, that's one Torah that he gave. Then on that Shabbos, he spoke about Torah and Tefillah, that last Shabbos. But some of calls it the Drush Achron, the last Drush that he gave. And then Mitzvah Shabbos, there's a few interesting things that happened. As Shabbos ended, Tzemach Tzedek davened for the Amud that night, like last night, 200 years ago. And because he saw it was the last minutes of the Alter Rebbe, the tune of the davening was very sad. Morosh Chayr, it says, very depressed. The Alter Rebbe, he says, the story goes that Tzemach Tzedek writes that the Alter Rebbe waited till he finished. Then he called him over and said to him that the Maggid said, a Torah, Al Demus HaKisei Kidmus Mara Adam. And he touched like this, that the Demus Mara Adam, the face that you down below you show, that's the face that's created in heaven. And that's like essentially your Morosh Chayr is creating a Morosh Chayr destiny. That was one of the last lessons. You can imagine, like, talking about minutes before he probably passed away, to say something like that. It's like amazing, like, and it's very reminiscent because there's 3 Rebbe Motzei Shabbos. We have Gimel Tammuz Motzei Shabbos, however you interpret it. Rebbe Rashab was Motzei Shabbos, also Beis Nissen. The Alter Rebbe Motzei Shabbos, and similar, the Rebbe Rashab too, in the last days of his life. So Friedrich Rebbe was like when the Rebbe Rashab said, "Bring me into the Zal." He wanted him to be brought with his bed. They brought him into the Beis Medrash. And that's when he said, "Ich gehe in Himmel," and the Ksavim lo zechayich. And when he said that, the Rebbe, Friedrich Rebbe, began to couldn't take it. He says he was began to cry, And the Rebbe Rashab, who was very weak, stared at him and said to him, "His spilus, moichin." And from then on, the Friedrich Rebbe stood like a stone. The Rebbe Rifkin writes in Ashkafta. Do you ever read Ashkafta of the Rebbe? You got to read that. If you haven't read that, it's easy reading actually. It's in Hebrew, but it's very easy reading. It's unbelievable.
What's it called?
Ashkafta the Rebbe, which means like the bed of the Rebbe. It's an expression from the Gemara, Ashkafta the Rebbe. It's unbelievable text. You got to read this. He documents the details of the last week of the Rebbe Rashab. But with halach, you got to see how he puts on tefillin, how by night he's speaking in his sleep, delirious, and he speaks the deepest things. I mean, you got to read this, especially the last page when he describes when the neshama leaves. The tear your heart out. Unbelievable piece.
Is it in print?
It should be in print. I have it here. And Beryl Rifkin was there. He was there, and he writes. Then he writes the first days of the Friedrich Rebbe's decease. You have to read it. It's like an unbelievable document, amazing document.
Yeah.
It's like so moving. The Rebbe, everything there, and how the Friedrich Rebbe doesn't want to say a mimer. But let's go back to the Alter Rebbe. I'm just saying a similarity. Another thing happened. The Alter Rebbe left a Torah called Nefesh HaShvela. You may have heard of this, Nefesh HaShvela. It's a short note of maybe 10 lines, 15 lines. And some say, there's different opinions. Some say he wrote it Motzei Shabbos. So that would be the last thing he wrote. Some say that he wrote it before Shabbos. Well, basically, it's definitely written close. And in some places it says that on Shabbos, before Shabbos began, the din is you have to clean out your pockets. So he took out of his pocket and he found this note. He had this note. He gave it to Tzemach Tzedek and said, "It's going to come to use to you." It's a Kumen Tzunutz. And in it, it's a little cryptic, but basically he says some things there that are. The Rebbe explains it. It's unbelievable. In the Chelik Tazayin, Likutei Sichos, there's an explanation of it, but essentially says Nefesh HaShvela, Lames Lamite. It's a soul that is really lowly in this world because it's in a world full of lies. And he brings the medrash that says that when God created the world, He asked Midas HaEmes, should He create the world or not? Midas HaEmes said, no, it's a world that's molei shkarim, it's full of lies. Then He asked Midas HaChesed. Midas HaChesed, it's a world that's molei chsadim. When the Rebbe chazed this over, he says, the Rebbe's words, Gewaldike Wort, the Alter Rebbe says that this world is molei chsadim and molei shkarim. It's interesting. It's true. There's a lot of kindness, but there's a lot of sheker. And then the Alter Rebbe continues. So the Medrash says, so the Eibishter took emes and threw it to the ground. The Medrash it says, emes me'eretz titzmach, and He created the world. So the Rebbe asks a question. Then the Alter Rebbe continues and says, even though it's a world of sheker, but not like the earlier generations where they did everything with truth, and people were subject to being compelled to give tzedakah. Says today, even though it's sheker, it's just we still have to involve ourselves with this world. Imagine it's the last thing he's writing or saying. It's pretty. They say, this is reliable sources say this. The Alter Rebbe initially rejected. I guess the case when people came to him for Gashmis things, he dismissed it. He says, "Why are you coming to me for Gashmis?" It was only later the Alter Rebbe accepted to also respond to Gashmis, to physical things. So the Nefesh HaShvela is the other extreme. So the story, it says that the Alter Rebbe, had he written Emes Lamitoi, we basically wouldn't have had so many Chassidim. So he wrote Emes, so it wasn't so bad. Here he says, even if it's sheker, the Alter Rebbe basically was acknowledging that a Rebbe has to not just be a Rebbe, but Ruchnis, but also V'gashmis. It's heavy stuff. So the interesting thing, the Rebbe asks a question, what does the Medrash mean that the world is sheker? Emes amiti simotze. God Himself was emes, created the world. You know the Rebbe's answer? You got to see this answer. It's unbelievable. He says, Midas ha'emes, says the world is sheker. When emes is a midah, but emes of atzmus can also tolerate sheker. Understand? So the midah of emes is obviously, it says create a world. No, the world is full of lies. How could you create a world? But there's a higher truth that says create a world even though it's lies. Lie is not going to like the midas emes sees a lie as a contradiction to itself, and emes of atzmus can handle that too. He's so secure he can handle. It's like I think Churchill said. I think during a time of war, the truth is so precious you have to surround it with an army of lies. I don't know if you could bring that into there, but I just thought of that. So let me just say one or two more things.
What was the Jewish Achron on Friday? He gave a Jewish on Shabbos. I didn't catch it.
Yeah.
On Shabbos.
Yeah.
And what did he speak about in his last?
Torah and Tefillah, basically. That Torah goes down and Tefillah is up. It's in here. I didn't really learn it in depth. I just read it quickly. There's some fascinating. There's one more thing. You got to hear one more thing. Very interesting about Mincha. Very, very. Didn't realize that one. Yeah, you can read this. It's really amazing what was going on there. Kamara Adam. That's a nice one. There's this one. It goes like this. It says that when they were running from the war. It doesn't say exactly when it happened. So the Alter Rebbe went with a wagon, and there was a bunch of wagons that followed him. There's a whole bunch of Chassidim went with him. And they came once on a Har Gavoya, on a tall mountain. And the Alter Rebbe stood up in the wagon and said, come time for Mincha. And then he said a Torah before they daven Mincha. What was the Torah that he said? It was relevant to their whole running. He said like this: this tefillah is called Mincha, not like the other tefillahs. Because Mincha is made out of, Mincha was made out of selis. Like simple, it was made out of flour and oil, basically. He says he gave an example. A king, when you bring him something of gold and silver and precious stones, it's very special. But you bring him a klei cheres, a simple what's klei cheres? Earthenware. It's nothing unique. So he says, so when they brought a par and an ayil, when they brought an animal in the mizbeach, that was a chiddush. Oh no, I'm sorry. No. When they brought precious things, there was no chiddush. He says, because in heaven you also have a pnei sheir and you have a pnei aryeh. You have in malachim that are very powerful. But on this world, you can bring only this world can bring a simple thing like a mincha, and that creates the biggest joy because it's not externally special. So the Rebbe said that's when you daven mincha. When you daven Shachris or Ma'ariv, you're ready before work and after work. But you daven mincha, you're doing it in the middle while you're involved in your business, and you're still davening mincha. That gives the greatest pleasure because it's in your simplicity. It's very similar to the sheker, the same idea. Mincha be'emtza sakav. She says now too we are be'emtza hateirach zman mincha. So they understood we're now also, as we run from the war, we're also in the middle of the. So when we daven mincha now, it's like a sign of. This was another interesting thing.
I understand that when you bring solace, it's not something, even in this world, it's not valuable like gold and diamonds and.
The one who has
so what's the point?
The one who has all the riches, the simple offering.
The offering by the king views how precious it is to you that you're giving it to him. The sacrifice that you're doing to give to him. Not that he needs it. He doesn't need gold or silver anyway. But if you bring something that's not so valuable to you, it's
you would be giving valuable time. That's what
it's more than valuable time to find gold and diamonds.
No, but
in other words, you're
working in the middle of
your service is really a diamond because you're giving whatever you have.
Giving yourself.
And you're giving your diamonds is not giving a par is more to me.
You don't have the diamond.
Your par is more. I don't know.
We don't have the diamond.
So you have a par, right?
We don't have the par.
No, but the times that the Alter Rebbe is saying, in the times of the base, when you give
You don't see that each one has its own quality?
Yeah, but I'm just trying to think the answer that I didn't.
It's two different qualities. Yeah, if there's a quality when you bring the best, but the best for God is not nothing special. He doesn't need no gold and silver. When He sees that you went out of your way, for you it was the effort. In the middle of the day, you daven mincha, or you bring something that for Him is a chiddush. Let's put this in Seder Shtalshus. It's a much bigger chiddush, simple deeds, than great achievements. Because greatness is a lot of, as I said, there's the Pnei de Markova, has plenty of giluyim there, fireworks.
An example, I think it's a good example. My son, he's a very good gift giver to his wife. He gives a piece of jewelry or, and a birthday, etc. These things are very flashy, right? But when her little daughter, a 3-year-old, presented her with a drawing that she put her heart and soul in school to give it, this brought tears to her eyes.
The words he says here, a melech bas v'dam ein lo chayf, doesn't have as much pleasure when you give him a gift of gold and silver than when you give him something that's very different, that he's not accustomed to. It's like the tzipur medaberes. He's not accustomed to earthenware. In the Gashmi is the cassette. So when you give him earthenware, that for him is like a chiddush. So one final thing I'll say is that I read that the last mimer that the Alter Rebbe said in Liyadi before he started to run, was Pasha Pinchas. It's called like Sakevis Hasheni. And one of the Chassidim that was there was Isaac Humler. You've heard of Isaac Humler, who was a big Chassid. So years later, Reb Zalman Zezmer, which was another big Chassid, a very big one, asked him to chazir the last Maimer in Liyadi. So Isaac Humler didn't want to, but then he pushed him, so he started. And within a few minutes, he fainted. And they revived him. A few minutes later, he started again, fainted again. And then he said, no. Because it was so emotional for him. The last Maimer, the Alter Rebbe Liyadi. The next few days, Zalman Zezman would not leave him alone. So he came back to him and said to him, I need you to chazir me the Maimer from beginning to end. So he said, okay. He says, hold on to my gartel. He held on to his gartel and he chazir the whole thing. That story is told.
Even like Rebbes themselves.
Yeah, and then finally, I was reading that the Alter Rebbe said that Paris and Liyadi are in the same latitude.
Yeah.
And he said, if I was able, I would shoot Napoleon. They could throw a spear. Right. However, Vazal Ichtan, what can we do? The Kader Aretz, the curvature, is in the way. So you have to be ma'ayin what that means exactly. If you threw a spear strong enough, but I guess the Kader Aretz means that the chumrius, the world is still not going to let it. It's going to absorb it. It won't let it go. I remember, since we're mentioning it already, talking about the Alter Rebbe, every year they used to sell the mitzvah Shabbos Bereishis. I mean, they still do, but if I bring it. So the Rebbe would have, the early years was Yechon and Gordon, the Gabbai would put on a shtreimel, remember? Twice a year you had the shtreimel. The Gabbai on Shabbos Bereishis and Shimon Goldman on Mishpatim for the Gemach. Okay. Shtreimel. So Rabbi Pinson, Shia Pinson, Alav Hashem, so he put on the shtreimel. It was Shabbos Bereishis Tavshin Mem. I remember it vividly. I was maybe one of the only people that heard the Rebbe say something, but I wrote it in the Hanacha. So then was printed a book called Migdal. So new stories came out. So he told the story. He said that when the first maps of America, of the world, were being made, this was the late 18th century. So they weren't being made with obviously aerial. It was made based on navigators who'd come back and they would map out all their precise travels by ship. So he said that they showed the Alter Rebbe a map of America. Listen to this. No. Shia Pinson is telling, before selling the mitzvahs, the Gabbai put on a shtreimel and said a Dvar Torah. That was the custom. Right. They still do it, but then it was in front of the Rebbe. The Rebbe would always have his chumash open, and it was like this. I remember. He would not even pick up his head. He was oblivious to what was going on. He was just reading chumash. I remember like this, very deep.
Why? Why would he? I would notice that all the time. Why would he? He's asking somebody to say a Dvar Torah for him. He
wasn't asking. This was a custom for the shul to sell mitzvahs. They did it in front of the Rebbe because they got more money that way. The Rebbe was in a different world. He was not Silas. They were in Ilam Hazan. I don't know. You asking me? Yeah.
The Rebbe would never look at the person who was saying the bar. He would be involved in his own other.
Yeah.
Personally,
Yeah.
probably too embarrassing for the person.
Anyway, so he tells a story that the Alter Rebbe, they showed him on a map in America. The Alter Rebbe pointed that there's a mistake in the map. And they asked him, how you were not there? He says, Istakla Baraisa Bara Alma. You look in Torah, you see the world was created based on Torah, and based on that he sees a mistake. And the Rebbe, no one expected, because the Rebbe never reacted. He didn't even pick up his head. The Rebbe kept looking at the Chumash and he said like this, and the Iked is, Abashas Mizn America is Almanishmachen Kentas. The main thing is that when you're in America, you shouldn't make a mistake. I mean, I always wonder what the Rebbe meant, but that was the Vart. In other words, the Alter Rebbe is speaking from above. He sees in the map. Now we're in America. Here, the main thing is you shouldn't make a mistake. Here they made. That was the Rebbe's response.
How do you take that, by the way?
He said that, by the way, it was on the spot?
And right on the spot, as soon as he finished the story, without looking up.
Where did you sit, by the way, when you were...
I stood right across the Rebbe. It was pretty
right near Yolkan?
No, he stood on the side. The Rebbe sat, let's say, here, and there was a long table.
Right, sure.
So the Rebbe sat here, Yolkan stood on the ground,
right.
Like, let's say 10 feet away. I stood across. I stood like where the camera was.
Well, the table was right front, no? That long table that...
There was no table, there was a shvil, there was a path.
You tall enough to see right there?
What?
Tall enough to see that high?
Oh, yeah, I was very close. It was pretty close. And if the Rebbe spoke lower, I'd move up. By my Morim, Simchas Torah, sometimes I would stand 3 feet from the Rebbe to hear because it was so noisy. I would move up.
But that table that all the Chassidim, the altar...
No, the Rebbe stood at the table was higher up, the platform. Then there's the tables on the floor, like you see now.
One main table that...
But in the center was not a table, it was a path.
And then also
it was a path. It was a path, and then there were tables.
Other tables, I see.
There was a path. Like now, there's a path. You can walk in between. There was once no shvil, but older people would have to go to the bathroom and stuff like that, and they would climb on the table. So the Rebbe said, make a shvil. So they made a shvil. They made a path, and that's where I stood right across. It was, I remember. It was the later years. It was harder to hear. I had to hear it.
So, but when the Alter Rebbe seen the mistake in the map,
my understanding of it,
yes,
I get, I sense what he's saying. But what do you think? How do you interpret it?
I don't know the answer to that.
It's easier to make a mistake when you're looking from below up.
In other words, the Alter Rebbe had the whole thing aligned from Atzilus or higher, Ak, whatever. So he saw it. So he said it's a mistake.
Right.
Now we're down on earth, and in America, he says, and here the main thing is we shouldn't make a mistake. Make a mistake, in other words, how we live our lives, a pitara and so on. That's
story.
I was there.
No,
he's confirming it.
not that. Do we have a source of the story?
It's printed in Migdalais, yeah, from reliable sources. Yeah. I read it there, he repeated it, and the Rebbe commented on it. Why? This story is not one of these fantastic...
I think it's related to what you said earlier.
Pretty fantastic.
The Lamata Lamayla creates what's going to come down, so you better get it right.
Yeah.
That's a
It's more tolerable.
Look, I would say is like this, that basically, I heard people who worked in the Alter Rebbe's, the last year or two of the Alter Rebbe's life, he focused a lot on the mile of Elam Haza, the work done down here below, which is interesting. As he was like so-called leaving, he was talking about what you have to do here. You see the common denominator of everything I repeated here, Nefesh Hashvel, the Sheker, the Yamu down below, the washing your face, Mincha, was all about that, I may be leaving, but remember you're where it is. And the Rebbe says in that Sikha, the main chiddush there is also Maisa, the power of Maisa in this world, the power of the Yesh. That even though it's unadorned, it's raw, it's difficult, it's sheker. The Rebbe says those words. The Gevaldik, he says, Gevaldik expression. The Rebbe's words, the Gevaldik expression that the Alter Rebbe says, Molech Sadim and Molech Shkarim. My only understanding is because the Rebbe is saying it was capturing what the world is like, especially today. Also today, people, America, there's never been so much chesed and tzedakah there is today in the world. Never, no one ever did such tzedakah. Forever, Turi or not, but and sheker at the same time. Says Molech Shkarim Marech Sadim. It's like interesting. right? And yet this is the place. So Midas Emes. It's so those might share a few words about the Alter Rebbe, Chavdal Teves. 200 years. And since I'm already talking and venting, I did a little informal survey, which the results are very saddening.
Or
Venting.
Well,
No, I'm not inventing really. Everything I said more or less I've just repeated. This was all Chazara here. But I didn't really analyze much. No, fine, it's all right.
Comment about that? You want to go on and say what you that thing?
I'll say one more thing and then you can say whatever you like. I did this like informal survey. I asked probably 140 people, all here in Kranetz, the last 2 weeks. I did this. I didn't do it at this table because you guys are on a higher level.
Yeah.
But I even Friday night, my own family, I had some guests here, so I asked everybody the same question. I asked, what does 200 years of the Alter Rebbe's Yahrzeit mean to you? You don't want to hear the results, my friend. It was either nothing, or, I'd like to know that was between those two. Either nothing or chatchila, period. And honest, people were honest. And I'm not saying this, by the way, to be judgmental or critical. Everyone. And one person said to me, my own daughter said to me, she said, I don't know what Chassidus Chabad means to me, to be very honest. She's a smart girl, and she's in it, in the system and all that. And it saddened me, not because of, I'm not critical at all, God forbid. Because yes, I think another person said to me, it's cultural. It means like a 200th anniversary. America 200th anniversary. We have a 200th anniversary. It's a cultural mark. We mark it as a cultural day. And now I think it shouldn't shock us to hear this, right? Because people are honest. If you're not honest, you could say, "Yeah, I'm bringing it, changed my wife, and all that." I'm talking. Let's be open and honest. And people then ask me, of course. Some people ask me. I said, "I'll tell you the truth. I can't really answer because I committed my life to this whole thing. So for me, it has to matter. My whole work, everything I do is around this. So I can't tell you if I was not involved. Maybe I'd be just like you. It's not like I'm going to hire my drega. I just happen to work around this. For me, this is like I wouldn't be. It's like it shaped my whole life. So 200th year of like the biggest chiddush in history, from my point of view. But I'm not saying this because I feel on a higher level. It just happens to be. Is it maybe circumstantial? Because I do it. Okay, if you worked. Let's say someone says the 200th anniversary of your steel mill. If you work there, it makes a difference. You don't work there, it doesn't. Who do I care about your steel mill? But it was interesting that we've got some work to do. Now you asked, and I think you asked me the other day, it struck me. It was a very good question when you said, so let's find someone in Crown Heights in Lubavitch that learns this, and we have a prototype.
Of what? Prototype?
Remember what he asked? You hear? He said to me, since we want to bring Chassidus to the world, let's take some people that were affected by Chassidus, show how it affected them, measure the results. So I said, I frankly would not go that direction. I'd rather start with a clean slate out there than go here, for obvious reasons. But so anyway, that's what I feel consoled because the Alter Rebbe said, Amoli Sheker, the world full of Sheker, which means we're also not immune to that Sheker. And yet, within it lies deep emes. And like someone told me, I said, it really doesn't mean anything to me, but I'll be on 770 tomorrow night because I feel I have to be. The Rebbe had a Farbrengen, Alter Rebbe, I learned something from Alter Rebbe, but more by commitment, more by feeling like...
What do you feel, Aaron?
Yes, I think
What does it mean to you? What does it mean to you?
Well, I'm being sort of molded by the language at the table because it all fits. On the one hand, for me, 200 years is a landmark of amazing chesed. Because I told you originally, if it hadn't been for the Alter Rebbe, I wouldn't be here. At the same time, I'm very, frustrated by the fact that it has not pierced the world of Sheker. And it's very frustrating, and I think that's one thing we all have in common. One thing we're learning and why we're interested in this revolution, so to speak, because we all feel the imminence of it on the one hand, and the necessity of it, and the frustration in making it happen.
Well said.
You know,
But that already means that's what matters to you. So even if you don't, like it changed your life, fine. But also matters to you. The whole thing matters to you.
Yeah, I mean, I could.
But not everybody. How many people are frustrated like? How many frustrated people are like that?
I don't know, but I could say, forget the whether just me. I could look right here in my own heart and say the value that it's given, and at the same time how far I am from realizing that value. Without looking outside the world.
If it didn't happen, we'd be together anyway. We'd be in some bar.
I don't know where we would be.
Maybe you would.
I wouldn't be here.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
But
You're
probably younger.
You ever think where you would have been? No, really. What would you have been? You been a businessman, wealthy, what? Huh? Healthy life? Healthy life?
I wouldn't have been living alone.
Healthy life?
I don't know if I'd be alive.
Yeah.
Because the discovery of the Tanya, I told you the story, this guy's farmhouse was in close proximity. I mean, this is very personal, but so trusting the guy. To me, I was at the time studying music at New England Conservative of Music on one hand and the Berkeley School of Music, both simultaneously, jazz and classical. And I was playing saxophone all day, and I was sitting on the stoop, drinking a 6-pack of beer with a friend. And for the first time in my life, I just cried out to God. Where I said, and I didn't believe in God. Right? I'm not supposed to cry. But I said, get me out of here. Because I don't know how the hell I'm going to get out of this hole.
You don't have what?
How the hell I'm going to get out of this hole? Get me out of here. Help me. Probably one of the first, and when I think about it, one of the only times, I'm trying to think how many times I really Soik Libon. I read it every day, every week.
Wow.
Soik Libon, and I sit there at the davening.
But that itself is a madrei. Not many people have such a serious.
No, but that's. But and then it was after that I found the Tanya in that bedroom where I'm staying in this house in.
So it was like an answer.
Last night, a guy was forgiven for bringing it. He was talking about how the Rebbe Shah handpicked every neshama to become students at Tanta Kamimi. So he was for me, and it wasn't this setting for me or anybody to speak out, but I mean, I really...
Who was it?
I was handpicked by the Alter Rebbe. That's how I live.
Rebbe Shab or the Alter Rebbe?
By the Alter Rebbe. I don't know that.
Come on, it's the same thing. It's a different generation.
It's the same thing because after I learned this...
Who's Fabring?
Mintz. What's his first name? A young married guy. He says a shir in Chassidus over there against him. Ephraim Mintz?
From JLI? Okay, whatever. Very interesting.
Why did you say you wouldn't be living? I mean,
because at that stage of my life,
hitting rock bottom.
Stoop, I was like.
But you were playing instruments. I mean, you weren't.
So what? I did a lot of things. That doesn't mean I wanted to live.
But it's an interesting thing.
It doesn't mean I wanted to live.
The gold, you interview everything.
But by the way, I'm more optimistic about this 200th anniversary. I really am.
I'm not. By the way, you took this as pessimism. I just told you.
No, but the frustration. I talk from Avraham, the frustration. I feel the frustration too. But at the same time, as a businessman, you have to make cheshbon nefesh. What's lacking? What's good? What's bad? From Liadi, from the Alter Rebbe, where he passed away in this little place, was a little godforsaken town in Russia. And how many Chassidim were there actually at the time? How many numbers? Now, if you 200 years later, Chabad is throughout the whole world. It's a known fact in the world. Presidents of all the countries know it. It's thousands of Chabad houses. So what I'm just trying to say is that there's been incredible worldwide development. Now, the final nuclear reaction of Magul and Mashiach hasn't occurred, but there is. The uranium is out there. It's being processed. There's a lot of accomplishments.
A lot of plantings.
And
Yeah.
the United States just had its bicentennial, right? 200th year. I don't know how many years ago. 202. And the United States may be in decline, whatever. But I feel that our this 200th year of the Lubavitch, that we only have to go up.
That's for sure. We have to.
200 was 1977, right?
1976.
1976.
I don't know what you do with these tapes, but I'm not really interested in my story.
I'll cut this. That's right. Yeah. First of all, no names are mentioned. You're not even on the screen. So, but secondly, I'll cut it.
Wasn't loud enough.
Probably not loud enough either. But I'll make sure.
But I want to tell you a little interesting story about what we're talking about.
I mean, is that the worst of it?
What?
Is that the worst of it?
Is it more?
The worst of what?
I mean, that is very inspirational, what you said.
Right. You should definitely say it. I don't see it as in any way negative.
Yeah,
What
what
you
an
know.
inspiration you are.
Right
to
out of
everybody.
God, it's beautiful.
It's very revealing.
If you were lying,
Staring at me.
I never
knew
played
that
saxophone.
about
I
you.
never
that's right. What's the matter with you? No, you remind me of the Ragged Shaver.
Believe me, where I came from,
The Ragged Shaver.
this is kindergarten.
The Ragged Shaver. Someone came to Ragged Shaver and like wanted a haskama for his writings. So he gave him his book, and the Ragged Shaver is looking at the front page. This, it says, wow, look at it. He's like amazed. The guy thinks, why the Ragged Shaver really? Ragged Shaver said, I didn't know that there was a publishing house in Shklov. You know? So you're talking about your personal things. He says, I didn't know you play saxophone. But what you said is very inspiring. I don't see anything, if you said I was lying in vomit and I just had, taken some who knows what, and, the story I told about David Carr, you ever hear that story? The night of what is it called? Unbelievable. He's a writer now for the New York Times. Talk about a story of inspiration. A guy, a real cokehead. A real cokehead.
Jewish?
I don't think so. But he wrote this brilliant book. It's called, I think, The Night of the...
Oh, I heard about it. Yeah, it was on NPR.
Excellent book. So he writes...
He's a recovery.
He writes a business... He's a business writer. Every Monday, his column is in the New York Times business section, on the left.
Mm-hmm.
And but the story is an amazing story about hitting rock bottom, man, alive, how you could destroy your life. So it's real coke and the whole thing and all the denial.
The story took a turnaround also?
Yeah, major turnaround. But what it takes to turn around. I mean, I'm just mentioning, I don't know if it's not relevant to this, but you see, I use this because I hope you understand, I'm the most optimistic that's out there. When I say this, is just more of a realization of things rather than, and to me, I see beauty even in the darkest places. Kind of darkness I've met. Trust me, darkness that things in my life I would never have imagined. When hearing abuse and what's possible, people capable of doing to each other, parents. Nightmares of nightmares. On the Nazi level.
Wow.
In our time. So yeah, and it taught me depths of Chassidus because I saw people whose Chassidus changed their lives. It was the only force that they could deal with such darkness. No therapy, nothing. I'm talking about, brutal abuse. Alcoholic father beating his children to pulp, these type of things. Sexual abuse, trust me, the darkest. And I had to grapple. I never talk about this, but I had to grapple. I had looked to this, I knew it in the light. I didn't know it in the darkness. For me, I didn't live in a dark world. We all have our dark side, but compared to that, first time I heard the guy came to me, I'll never forget it. I was 26 years old, and I was relatively not naive. I was teaching. I knew my stuff. I had a psychological side to me, but I was a kid. At the end of the day, what did I know? And a guy came to me twice, maybe 45. He lives now in the old city, and he wanted to talk to me privately because my teachings were far more mature than I was, because I was teaching Chassidus, But I know how to teach it, so fine. But it wasn't me. But people thought it was me. They still think it's me.
That's good.
I'm trying to catch up. It take a lifetime, but that's yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so he says to me, it was my office. I remember. I'll never forget this. It was to me one of the deepest moments that many afterwards that changed my life completely and my appreciation for Chassidus as much as I had known. And I was writing for Brengens. I was in it. I wasn't like on the periphery. And he said to me, he starts talking to me. He says, "I want to share with you something." And okay, it's confidential. Fine. He tells me, I've asked permission just to repeat it. I'm not using his name, but he said to me, "I learned love from a dog." With that exact expression. I remember I looked at him. I always keep my composure. I didn't make any face. I didn't know what he's talking about. I didn't know where he's going with this. This can be very crazy. So then he says to me, my father was alcoholic. He'd come home violent. I was the oldest son. My father would try to get to my mother and beat her with a bat. I would always get in the way not to make sure. So he would beat me. and my bodies were bruised almost nightly, black and blue marks, like my whole body. And I would sleep out in the yard by the kennel. And the only thing that soothed me was the dog. You know, a dog just has that. Says that's where I learned about love. You know, I remember he told this to me. I was like, first I thought, guys, hallucinating, or I never heard anything like this before. And trust me, I didn't see myself like, you know, I read books, I read things, but it was like a person telling me a story. And then I realized, I was like, no, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I didn't say anything, God forbid, that challenged him. I just listened, and I remember I was like had nightmares from it because I started thinking about it. He didn't want advice. He was just telling me. He was sharing his life with me. He says he started learning Torah, and I was coming to my class. My class is very meaningful to him. I remember he says very nurturing. He says it's more powerful than a dog. You know.
Did you ever have a dog?
No.
I had a dog once, and I was not abused, but the dogs have a knack for picking up. They're very sensitive.
Okay, it's God's creatures.
Sometimes and lick my hand. You know,
yeah.
You could pick up that I wasn't feeling.
No, I fully understand. Anyway, we became friendly. You know, he used to talk to me more. He wasn't even. It wasn't like I wasn't like he wanted my advice. He was more sophisticated than that. He had gone through a lot. Today he's a happy married guy. He's living in an old city, Yerushalayim. He's a good guy. And he still has. I meet him. See still the anguish on his face. He's got certain wrinkles, you know, that never go away. But as a child. But I remember then, because I'll tell you what I was struggling with. It wasn't, besides empathy and I cared and that, I said to myself, so what does Chassidus have to say about this exactly? Does it go to these places? Or it stops like by the door of sanity? Doesn't enter the insane, if you know what I mean? And then I started hearing, more people started sharing, and I remember hearing about abuse. I couldn't believe it, about fathers raping daughters. You know, I don't want to be explicit, but the worst. And not once. Children living literally worse than a Nazi concentration camp, which was only for how long did you stay alive? Here for years, a child by a parent. It was horrendous. I remember once one person shared with me. I literally was so disturbed. I got into a car. I drove to the close local bookstore. I went to Barnes & Noble. Only Barnes & Noble I could find was in King's Plaza. There weren't that many then, and I just thought I went to the section of abuse. I had to read about this. I couldn't believe it because it was like the Twilight Zone. I was seeing a world that people are living in. When they open up, it doesn't follow the rules of regular existence. Everything is different. Like by them, love is hate and hate is love. Like I remember I once raised my hand and the person pulled back. I said, what? You know? Yeah. Every time someone raised their hand when I was a kid, it was a punch. You know. So I realized what's going on here, And I started reading. I remember I read the book, The Courage to Heal. This is a very raw, heart-wrenching book written by two women. They're lesbians today, both sexually abused. But this is a book. It's considered a Bible by the healing world. It's a very illuminating. Of all books, it taught me to appreciate Chassidus like I never appreciated it before. Can you imagine a book like that? Complete darkness, you know. But it's about the courage to heal, how you heal from it. But I saw the depths of Chassidus because I realized then that when Chassidus talks about Cheshech and Ur, I started understanding it completely different. You know, Cheshech Ur, there's a place where they meet. Is there God in darkness? Is God beyond light? You know, it became no longer hypothetical, academic. Okay, God's beyond light and dark, and now we can find God everywhere. I started understanding Yisr, Ermin, and Cheshech really in a very personal way. I'm telling you, it transformed how I understood Chassidus. I mean, not so much the Havana, pure Havana, but application, tremendously. I understood the relevance. I realized how deep this is. Because it really does address it. And the Tzimtzum Arishan is not a hypothetical, nice little thing God pulled off to make a world. But the Tzimtzum Arishan has real consequences. And there's some children growing up in homes where there's a Tzimtzum Arishan in the fullest sense of the word there. You know, that type of pain. And start realizing, that some questions when Moshe asks God, where are you in the pain, It's not just Mitzrayim, the Jews served in Mitzrayim. It's pain today. You just to start, and that's when I understood the emes of Chassidus more than any, because I never saw any in Torah. You don't hear Torah address these things. Like with show me Shulchan Aruch where it says, what are you supposed to do with a child who grew up in a horrendous home? It comes to you as a rov. I had a rabbi said to me, what am I supposed to tell him? Halachically I can tell him, do this, do that. But where are the psychological, emotional responses in the Torah? They don't exist.
Abusing children. I mean, everybody keeps asking what's the halacha behind all this stuff.
Yeah. Right.
It's not even mentioned. It's
right.
Nas. Somebody rapes somebody.
Yeah. But the Chassidus, but by me it was more than just the halacha part. By me it was how do you address if Torah does not address the emotional, psychological problems of real life, to me it's worthless. Honestly, I mean I'm being very sacrilegious. It would be worthless to me. How would God give a Torah to a world that can't? What do you mean? I remember I was challenged. Someone said to me, "Yeah, your Torah is very nice. Tell me what do you do with a child that lived in a home that was a horror every day?" If you can't answer that, it's a big question. Where's the Torah Lashon Herod for this person? So the conventional answer is, forget about the past, embrace the light, do mitzvahs, everything will be good. Yeah, but these people are tortured and they can't sleep at night. It's not like, I'm going to just learn. It doesn't. And the Rebbe's approach was not just Hes Chadas pushed away. These people, their whole lives are affected by it. Every relationship is affected. That's where, for me, became the real. I mean, you're talking about the real stuff. This is where it really. That's where it hits home. That's if you show that it can help there, then I remember one person saying to me, "My darkness will never leave." And I said, "Let me tell you something. I don't care how deep your darkness is. I saw real light, and I saw the Rebbe, and I saw Chassidus, and the light of Chassidus is more powerful than your darkness. And we'll see who wins. And I will never give in, because that person wanted me to admit that they're hopeless, basically."
The EMSA or what?
No, I've won. One. It's not. There's no winning and losing. Yeah. The person has found a glimpse of the light. And one of the things is because a person like that needs to hear the statement. I said it intentionally because I wanted them to know there's another way to look at it. They need to know there's a glimmer of hope. Because the worst part is the hopelessness that results from it all. It's hopeless.
How do you explain a Shulchan Aruch not dealing with children?
It's a very good question. I think about it a lot. I think, first of all, there's the thing called Rebbe Shuften, which means Shulchan Aruch has its limits. It doesn't talk about Nazis. It doesn't talk about things that are off the map, off the reservation. That's number one. So I think the horrors that are existent, the Torah never really goes there. The Rebbe once said something very fascinating. Tavshim Memhei, Basel Gani. It was very interesting. The Rebbe said that there's a Shar HaKlippas in Eitz Chaim. The Rebbe said because for there to be klippa in the world, there has to be in Torah a discussion about klippa, in a sense. I mean, it's a pretty wild idea. So the Torah, not that the Torah creates it, but the Torah conceptually, so to speak. And then the Rebbe said, and that's why there's certain things not mentioned, because the Torah doesn't want to even give it any credibility. So not that the Rebbe said exactly what I'm going to say now, but I derive from that it could be the Shulchan Aruch does not talk about something it talks about a murderer. It'll talk about plain crime. It doesn't talk about
talk about rape,
but rape of a father and a daughter, and incest. Yeah, what's incest? Chayav Misa. It's as harsh as it gets. Gilui Arayos. That's a whole Torah. It's very detailed there. We read it on Yom Kippur.
Whereas rape is generally always. Yeah, I was always shocked that rape is dealt with seemingly such a lenient way in the Torah.
Have to marry her if she wants him, who would want her, and a monetary.
Between you and me, and I mean, I don't want to go there, but a lot of I unfortunately deal with some of these things. A lot of Rabbanim, they will not say it publicly. They say this because human nature is people rape each other and so on. There's also molestation. What they call today this was always done and it always happened. And it's not that we think it's great, but and that's why we don't have to report it to the police. And this is Rabbanim that say this. I can't. Something I can't tell you about Zman HaShas or Zman Moshe Rabbeinu. I wasn't there. I don't know. Maybe it was different Teva, but I know for sure there's no way. I personally can testify without a thread of doubt that there's a thing called murdering a soul. And molestation murders a soul. It's not just a little crime. It's not someone give you a slap once. And murder is murder. And murdering a soul, the devastation and damage that it does, I know it from personal observation. So if the Torah speaks about rape, I have to say it's not talking about that type of situation. That's the only conclusion I have. And the Torah doesn't really talk about these scenarios. I know that rape was then, maybe it was a thing that was common, maybe it was war, The whole world was different. I don't know. The rape of today, I cannot see that the Torah would. I mean, the Torah sees seeing killing a soul as being a big thing. How could I would have asked the Rebbe if I had the opportunity such a question.
Never spoke about that. I wondered about that.
No, he never said. He never minimized it, but he never. I have not found. I looked around. I would have definitely. I've written the Rebbe a whole thing about this. I would have gotten. But I know that. But I can tell you. I'm not saying this arrogantly. I'm almost sure the Rebbe would answer.
What would the Rebbe answer?
Because he answered always this way. He would say, "You go to Yididi Mumchin." By the Rebbe, this was a Mumche question. It wasn't a question by the Rebbe. If a Reifer says that this is dangerous, it doesn't matter whether the Torah says rape is. The Torah doesn't say rape is good. However, it deals with it. There's no way the Rebbe would say if experts say, you have to follow what the experts say. I'm convinced that the Rebbe would answer something of that nature. And that I didn't study the halachas about it. I'd have to go back and see if it's limited and so on. I don't think you can just take.
You would think that voluntary incest, so to speak, is chayav misa. I mean, assuming there was a voluntary situation,
and if it was a
crime, and yet with a rape, a violent rape, which is a violent oppression of another person, is just
a little worse than seduction.
Misdemeanor.
And you have to marry the guy.
Just a little.
So maybe it's not rape. Maybe it's seduction. Exactly, you just said it. Maybe it's not rape. Maybe the rape, what we call rape in the Torah, is not rape. That's why I'm saying to you, I have to study it again. It may be talking far milder form, where it is like that. Look, how could there's a spirit of Torah. A child in Torah is not seen like the Quaker saw a child, or some of the others that is an unshaped, evil spirit. That's the Quakers describe a child. Deaf, dumb, and mute, and has an evil spirit in it, and that's why beating a child is what like brings God back into it. There was the Quakers write that. Look at some child psychology books in the 40s and 50s.
The Mishnah says you'll spare the rod.
Yeah, and yet what? And you see that comment, the Rabbi just didn't spare the rod. The Rabbi touched their children. So, you have the few. My point that I'm trying to say is, there's a ruach. There's no way that a hevel shein beichet that says that even when you build a Beis Hamikdash, you don't al tigu b'mashiach, right? The children you leave Torah, learning Torah, that they would be violated, and the Torah would see that as like, okay, big thing. I can't see it. It's not in the ruach of anything I've ever learned. So if the Torah does minimize, so to speak, rape, I have to say it can't be that. It doesn't make sense. It's hepech chanechel na'api darkei ki yishalcha bincha, everything shenant levanecha, the sensitivity to children. Judaism is based on healthy children. Avram, the whole Avram's greatness. On the end of the day, when Hashem says, "How could I conceal from Avram's doim?" Because why? Because Avram, he says that because he gave his life. It's the ultimate compliment to Avram. It's not his God-fearing, that he committed his life, his children, to lasses daka mishpat. Yishmael behaving a certain way, even sexually, right away banished from the house. The whole Torah is based on. By me, Taras Mishpacha means something completely different than when I want. It's not mikveh. Taras Mishpacha means, as the words say, a pure home. A home that is pure in ruach, in spirit, sexually, emotionally, psychologically. A pure environment, a healthy environment. You just were talking to my granddaughter. God forbid, you have your own grandchildren, children. The purest thing. By me, the violation of a child is probably the worst possible sin. I don't think there's a sin worse than that. Because they're defenseless. So I can't see the Torah suddenly minimizing it. No way. It doesn't make any sense to me. If I found halacha that said that something is not so big, I'd have to say that's some anomaly and figure out what it means. It just doesn't, it's impossible. I don't know what was in his mind. I had the same question as you do, but there's no way you could touch like that. Defiling a child, is there a worse crime? It's irreversible. It's generational. It doesn't get worse than that. You know what I'm saying? Rape of an adult is also devastating, but a child is like, there's no protection against it. I'm just thinking to myself.
All of poskim,
of all sins,
all poskim, all throughout the ages, shuvas, they don't deal with it. Never come up.
Very, very little.
No, pretty rare.
I know that's weird. It's either was off the mat, or either was not even considered a possibility.
To talk to.
But they definitely, but they were not covering it up. You're talking about Bali Halacha. You're talking about Pir Shamayim, so they weren't covering it up. To say that it didn't exist.
It was never reported.
Yeah, but to say that it exists in the shtetl, maybe when people were healthy, that didn't exist. Because let me ask you a question. They say most abusers were abused. Now, there must have been a point that someone there was an abuser. I don't think Adam and Chava, they may have done some things wrong. They ate from the tree, but abuse started somewhere. So maybe it was a pure environment, and Taka was a holier world. And there were a few crackpots, I'm sure. There were always some criminals, but it wasn't a common. I didn't live there, and we weren't told, I'll tell you what, my good old, I'm still skeptical, but when I was more skeptical, I used to always ask, well, how come we're only told the good stories? How come no one ever tells us the nightmares that happened in times of the Baal Shem Tov? We only hear the tzaddikim, the story, and they always have happy endings. So I always wondered why. So it sounded to me very self-serving.
Mushroom, we learned about mushroom against Moshe.
No, Chumash, and the contrary. Chumash is a nightmare. Nobody is intact there. Brothers, rape, incest, castration, killing. Is there one brother that doesn't end up killing his other brother? I don't think there's one story where there's an intact family. Everyone's dysfunctional, seemingly, based on our standards. Cain and Hevel, Noach's children, you go, Avram's children, Yitzchak's children, Yaakov's children. Is there one? What's going on? They think Yaakov already, okay, so they decide to sell.
When Moses was the son, the bris of the child, she yells at the little baby. She says, "You almost killed my husband. You're a Baal Chassan Maves." A little baby.
There's another time that he saved the husband.
You would think that would be Zipporah saying that to her son, who's not. What is he responsible for the fact that he didn't do it?
It's touched two different ways. It's touched also that you saved them by the blood. You look at the Rashi and the hyenas, and
she's not mad.
I don't know. I tell you the truth. For me, all these issues were resolved when I started learning Chassidus, and when they learned that Torah medaber is bel yainim. The whole Torah is in heaven, spiritual, and betachtenim is meramezes. The Torah, the down below, is already the technical part. So when you hear the Torah that way, it's a whole different story. Then the Torah is a blueprint for life, and then it played itself out. If the Torah was based on these behavior, these people, yeah, it'd be hard pressed to really say, okay, they're my heroes exactly. But if you understand the Shvatim and the Ovis as Ruchnisdik archetypes, it changes everything. Then I'm not saying Amy creates Midei Pshute, it's still Pshat, but Pshat is informed by the Ruchnis. It's not just some story. The Torah is very challenging if you don't.
The Rebbe always learns the Mila to the tzaddikim, that the Yosef's brothers didn't sin and David and Melech didn't sin.
So you have to say
everything that apparently that a Litzvisha or somebody that didn't learn Chassidus would say, boy, they're human too. All these Avos, all these people they made. Chassidus always learns that everything is.
No, the answer is because but I think there's two levels. There's in Ruchnis for sure. There's a whole, so-called, the unfolding of a spiritual cosmic drama. In that sense, things are far purer. But that doesn't contradict, the fact is that Dasari Ruge Malchus, even though it was done by this anti-Semitic Roman, but remember they asked in heaven, is it correct that we deserve a punishment? And the answer is yes. And that's why they allowed, the Rabbi Shmuel, we say Yom Kippur, because they sold Yosef into slavery. That's what he comes to them. So you see that there was something. Whether you call it a chet like your Yetzer Hara, my Yetzer Hara, they may have had deeper intentions, but you cannot dismiss it that it was just they didn't do a mitzvah. Yeah. No one says selling Yosef was a mitzvah. A mitzvah, not exactly. No, there's the explanation. No, the explanation, they saw Yosef as challenging Mashiach, challenging Yehuda. Right. So no, but so their kavanah was good, but no one says that there was not consensus. The kavanah was, but the kavanah is a kavanah, and then there's the actuality. That you can learn lessons from it. There's plenty of lessons. Anyway, are we learning more? What are we doing?
I think
this is Chavdala Teves. I think this is learning. This is to me, this is where it comes out to play.
I just want to say one thing.
I was talking to the Shluchim on Thursday night, and I didn't even go this far because a lot of Shluchim are not ready for it. This is how Chassidus has to be taught. If you cannot face a person who suffered really greatly and have something to say to them from Chassidus, I don't think you're even coming close to the thing. When someone sat by the Rebbe, And even though the Rebbe may not have said a mimer to him, but the Rebbe was being informed. I was saying this, they were surprised when I said, it's not just when you teach a class, it's when someone's come to you for advice. You're different than a therapist. You're different than another rabbi. You're a Chassidish soul doctor. You should be using, not necessarily the words of Chassidus, but the spirit of Chassidus to help heal people. It's about healing. I don't mean healing as in medicine. It's healing, it's about healthy life, how you're aligned, how you're connected. And that to me is a critical component. That's why I was sharing the stories with the Alter Rebbe. You see how he sees that Tzemach Tzedek is Morish Chayra. It's a lesson in life. He didn't just give my Torah from the Magid. I'll give you a Torah. It's not Dvar Torah. Right. It's a lesson in life. Everything is a lesson in life. Everything the Rebbe ever uttered.
Where was the middle?
I'll tell you something. I don't know. Were you here when I gave the class? Who was it that said to me? Oh, I gave it. You learn this. They learn Ayin Beis. Let's talk about Ayin Beis. And I've been asked this question. And it literally, it can bring you to tears when you think of it this way. So everyone looks at Ayin Beis, it's formidable. Look at these hundreds and hundreds of pages. But let's just change I'm going to just give you a little different scenario. Imagine you go into the Rebbe Rashab, or the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, doesn't matter. And you pour out your heart and soul, say about all your issues. My life, my children, Parnasa, my psychological, whatever. And the Rebbe starts, instead of answering you in the way that you want an answer, he starts reading Ayin Beis to you, and you say to yourself, one second, I asked the Rebbe all these questions, why is he talking to me about Atzilus and Lifnei Tzimtzum and all this? So either one thing or other, either the Rebbe is out of touch, Chaz v'Shalom, it was in a different world than I am, or I'm just not getting something. Now, of course, let's lean toward the second, that sounds more. So you come out of the Yechidus, and you tell a Chassidish and say, I told the Rebbe all my things, and he started telling me things in Ayin Beis or Tanya, whatever. And the Chassid says, the Rebbe was answering all your questions. He just uses a language that you need to learn. You want him to come on your terms. He wants to tell you where to go find a job and how to be mechanech your children. So he uses the words Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir. You just have to learn how to decipher it. So for me, when I read this and I say, a Rebbe sat, Tanya is L'kutei Eitzos. The Alter Rebbe wrote Tanya to give Eitzos to people. He didn't write it to write a doctrine. The Eitzos is a doctrine, but he didn't start, I'm going to write a philosophical doctrine, then we'll figure out how we apply. The whole book is about Eitzos. He said that I have no time, people can come into me every day because of this. I'm going to write it in a book. It's Eitzos. So if you think of it that way, imagine no one else heard Ayin Beis but you from the Rebbe Rashab. And you say to myself, one second, he's telling me all the answers to my things, it's just in code. And then you start thinking, the Rebbe Rashab cared about a Jew. He cared about a human being. He cared about the human condition. And instead of sitting and giving people personal advice, he decided he's going to write thousands of pages. You have to say that this is his greatest empathy. And maybe when he's spelling out every madrega, and he says, okay, you know what? We'll find another madrega between Chochmas Tema and Radla. What he's doing is, and this I'm giving my own example, imagine a father bending down to a child and teaching him to walk. And say, here are the steps. What the depth of the compassion of a father, a mother, stepping, here's the stepping stone, here's walk here, first step, second step, third step, fourth step. And I'm giving you all the stepping stones you'll ever need. To me, when a Rebbe writes these madregas, it sounds esoteric. He's basically doing exactly the same thing. He's giving us personally, here are the stepping stones for your life. Now you have to translate. Yes, he didn't make it easy. He could have said it in a much simpler language. But there must be a reason that it's written. Maybe this is more thorough, whatever the word is. But if you take that attitude, Chassidus is a different world. It's a personal message to me. He wrote Ayin Beis, not for me, it's for everybody else or for somebody else. It's a personal message of how to live your life in the fullest possible way. And if you think of it personally, and you care that way, imagine every word was written with that care. Every level, he's written with care. Exactly, I want to tell you exactly the next step. How you're going to get from here to here. Every stone, it's not like, okay, there's no missing a step. You miss a step, you're missing something fundamental. That's how I see it. So to me, it's like every letter in Chassidus has to be answer Achdus. How it's creating more Achdus. It's a fragmented, dark world, and every letter, every darga, every bechina, every level is another connection. It's like, you ever see excellent programmers or excellent technicians? There's no such thing as they're going to miss a switch. You miss a switch, the whole machine can blow. Every little thing, every wire has to be. Or a surgeon, he decides he's going to skip a few steps. What's going to happen? Every step he has, every nerve, every, and if you look at it that way, Chassidus comes alive. Then you say, okay, so everything's negated to Achdus. Tell me how. And then once negated to Achdus, then it's negated to my Achdus, to me being at peace with myself, peace with others, creating some unity in this fragmented life, and then it becomes relevant. That's how I see it. When I approach a Maimer, it's exactly how I approach it. What I just said to you is pure methodology. Approach a Maimer this way, guaranteed, as these questions, you'll learn a Maimer like you never learned it. You may not get all the answers, but you'll have the right questions. You're asking the right questions. You're saying, okay, one second. The Rebbe Rashab sat with a pen and wrote this line. Why is he adding this line? And I don't care if it takes you a whole lifetime to read one page. It doesn't matter. If it's like a mother nurturing a child, every step, there's a way to do it. Anyway, that's my...
But if somebody comes in to speak to you and they're traumatized or they've had a lot of darkness in their lives, do you as a therapist, do you use Chassidus, or do you come to Tanya? Do you bring out Tanya? Do you really actually in practice empirically use Chassidus as the basis of your
100%. Everything, any advice or anything that I've ever told any counsel is either based directly or indirectly from Chassidus.
Do you show them in a book? Do you specifically?
Sometimes yes, sometimes not. Sometimes a person's pouring out their heart and soul. I'm not going to open a book. It's a little. They want the person, so it's not always appropriate to do it that way. And I'm not a Rebbe. Even the Rebbe didn't pull out a book. But
no, but you're saying that I'm hearing you're saying that Chassidus should be the ultimate type of psychotherapy.
100%.
And do we see are there therapists out there? Do you
no.
Private in your website incorporate Hasidic well-being? Do you? Are there such thing? Is there such people?
I don't think there's enough collaboration between the medical and healing health world and us Chassidim. I don't think there are many Chassidim that know how to explain Chassidus this way.
Because if you could empirically show that a Hasidic
I know exactly where you're going. Of course,
is more successful than psychotherapy. Then
you got it, mate. I got it. I understand.
And why hasn't it been done?
You asked me why it hasn't been done.
Haven't done it.
Why it hasn't been done?
You explain these themes in your program.
Which program?
Meaningful life.
I speak about it all the time. This is my recurrent theme. Everything, even here we speak about it. Not every class, but we talk about all these levels of. Here we're learning it inside, but for sure this to me is central.
The other one does also.
Huh?
The other one does. One student speaks very much in the same, very much the same.
Good. That's the way it should be. I have a look. It's a whole other study of taking these ideas and turning them into a whole model. I've done parts of it, but it's a process. I think what we've learned, for example, is really the levels of Achdus between Tzir and L'mayla Mitzir, between Gvul and Bli Gvul. To me, these are the stepping stones. I mentioned them many times. I wanted to say one thing in Ayin Beis. What I just said is pure Ayin Beis, by the way. I didn't just say stam. In Ayin Beis, you see this. You see, because there's nowhere you see such meticulous detail. The need for every level to be spelled out. And I'll take this further. I was going to say something, that we're learning now page. We might as well learn inside. We're up to page. Why don't you stop it? And we'll start again, so we don't have to edit it later. I'll keep it separate.